And welcome back to the Research Methodology second group class. Thank you. My name is Stephen Harrison and I'll be taking you through this particular class. Today we're going to be looking at primary data, specifically that collected through observation. Before we actually touch on this, there may be some doubts exactly about what we're on about in observation. If you can, there was a case that was seen quite a lot and it's been shown on television as a good example of what we mean by this, or a very specific part of the observation. If you can imagine a toy company wanting to get some information on how the children would appreciate their new products, it's all very well taking them out and asking children, do you like robots, do you like dogs, rather than that, to actually get an opinion from that particular market, which may not necessarily be very clear, where most of the answers to that would probably work on, well, it depends really. So we need to actually have something where we're actually observing of how somebody would interact with the product in this particular case. So what they would do is they would put the toys in a room with other toys and then invite children to come in and play with them, and then they would watch them probably through one of those one-way mirrors. Was it two-way mirror? The ones where they only see the reflection but you can see them. They can't see you but you can see them. And this is important in the sense that you're not changing anything that they're doing because you're not interacting with them. So these are some of the kind of things that we've been doing. So you get the information by how, in this case, the children would be reacting to the toys. Would they actually show them how they would be playing with them? Would they be ignoring them? Would they be quite dissatisfied with them? So again, we're going to be looking at getting this information through observation, literally through watching people. Observation involves the systematic observation, recording, description, analysis, and interpretation of people's behavior. So if that is what we're after getting, of how maybe somebody's behavior has changed. Now, in some cases, I mentioned the thing of the toys because that's a very sort of a marketing-based or commercial product. In other words, in the case of this, if you're doing anything where you're talking about maybe consumer behavior, then those are the people's behavior that we're talking of. In other words, by setting up a particular store in a particular way, which works best, it's a form of research of finding out which way it sells better. And how you would do that is see how the customer interacts with the store, how they move around, how much time is spent in a particular area of a store. So you can see that this is the validity or the usefulness of this kind of data collection. So the two main types, participant observation, emphasizes the discovery of meaning attached to particular actions, qualitative, and the structured observation is concerned with frequency of actions, quantitative. So if we looked at, as an example, the meaning attached to actions, so how many people would walk into a store and actually start interacting with a particular product, how many people pick it up and touch it, what they're doing with it, how they actually act towards it, would be the participant observation. The structured would literally be how many people are walking in and out of the door or in and out of that particular area. So the definition of participant observation is where the researcher attempts to participate fully in the lives and actions of subjects, enabling them not to merely observe what is happening, but also feeling it. So the choice of the participant observer's role. So the determining factors are the purpose of the research and the time available, the degree of suitability felt by the researcher, organizational access, the access that the organization you're working with will give you, and of course, ethical considerations. So if you just think of the ethical considerations, are you going to be in some way pressuring them to do something that maybe they wouldn't normally do? I suppose an example of this is, if you try this, we will give you a free something or other. Points to consider, well, the threats to validity, is it actually valid because maybe you're influencing them? The perspective of the subject rather than the researcher, so don't forget, you're looking at it from your point of view, they're seeing it from a different one. And the advantages and disadvantages of participant are summarized in the table further on. So some of the advantages. It's good at explaining what is going on in a particular social situation. It also heightens the researcher awareness of significant social process. In other words, you can see how things are going on that maybe you hadn't particularly thought about, but you're actually there amongst the action, as it were. You can see these things. So it's useful for researchers working within their own organization, mostly because of the access that you will probably be allowed to be given far more than another one. Some participant observation affords the opportunity for the researcher to the experience for real the emotions of those who are being researched. So virtually all data collected are useful because it shows what they're actually doing. Maybe it's other things that you could record that you hadn't thought of doing in the initial stages. All right, some of the different disadvantages. Well, first of all, it can be quite time consuming. I remember when somebody was doing some investigation about flows for a particular cafeteria, and really he was saying that, oh, there's so many people an hour, we'll go past this place that I'm going to be opening up as a cafeteria, or standing in another cafeteria, that there are 55 people an hour. But the problem is that isn't true. That is only depending on that time he went there. Ideally, he would have to stand there every single day from when the cafeteria opens, pre-COVID-19, let's say that was at 7:30 a.m. until maybe 9:30 p.m. when the thing closed down in the end, every single day. It's a ludicrous amount of time and not really practical to do that. That way it would give you enough information of what the actual flow through of pedestrian traffic is, but that's just too time consuming. Right, it can pose difficult ethical dilemmas for the researcher. Again, we have our own biases on these things that will change that. We maybe want a higher number, so we pick a time when, yes, 300 people an hour did pass, but only on a Saturday morning between 10 and 11. So high levels of role conflict for the researcher because he's trying in some way to get a particular reaction, but by involving himself in the interaction, is changing maybe the consumer's reaction with them. The closeness of the researchers to the situation being observed can lead to significant observer bias, that I've mentioned. It can change things. The participant observer's role is a very demanding one. Actually means, the time spent and being awake and prepared all the time, and it may not be suited to everyone. Access to organizations may be difficult. They may not be prepared to have you standing inside of a company where people are working. It may be causing problems for the workers of you getting in the way. So it may not be particularly advantageous for the company to have you do that. And data recording can be quite difficult as well, because in between all of this going on, you have to actually record the information that you're after, especially if you're considering that you're talking about people's behavior. There's so many different facets of people's behavior that you may have to actually record at the time. So, some things to consider. Structured observation is systematic and aims to establish straightforward facts. Structured observation was an important part of Mintzberg's study of managerial work. This was back in the day, so they were doing this, the time management. And if you think about it, do you think that somebody would actually change their method of doing something while somebody is watching them? There's a particular example of this, a sort of an extreme example of this. If anyone's ever watched the movie Schindler's List, where one of the Jewish workers in one of these factories that were run by the Nazis, and a senior Nazi officer comes over and asks one of the workers to assemble, I think it was a hinge, and it took him 5 seconds because obviously he was fairly keen to do a good job with this person who had power of life and death over him. And he did it in 10 seconds, and then the Nazi at the end stated, well, if it only took you 10 seconds, how is it when I'm not here, you only do 25 in an hour or something? In other words, things change because of who's watching them. So the advantages and the disadvantages are explained in the summary in this table in the book. So data collection and analysis, choosing an off-the-shelf coding schedule. Okay, when we're talking about coding, we're just talking about giving a number to a particular, either an action or a particular item. So you design your own coding schedule, or combining both types of schedule, or use a simple, a manual, or a complex computer method of analysis. So there are two ways to do this. One is the deductive approach using existing literature. The second, often, which is mentioned here, uses the data itself to create the coding. So, or we can have a hybrid approach. So you can either have one or the two. So some threats to validity and reliability, subject to error. So the person that you're watching, their errors may be not exactly what you were expecting at that particular time. The time error, and the observer effects and strategies to overcome this. The habituation and minimal interaction. In other words, the more you interact with the person, the more you're going to change how they would probably act without you being there. So in summary, participant observation is used in a wide range of social settings. Observation means adopting a number of potential roles, and roles are differentiated according to the degree of concealed identity and participation in events adopted by the researcher. The aim of participant observation is to develop theory and avoid mere storytelling. Rather than, if you ask every individual why you're buying something, you may get a history of their family, which is not necessarily what you're after. Structured observation is concerned with the frequency of events, so it's characterized by high levels of predetermined structure and quantitative analysis. The main threat to reliability and validity are subject error, time error, and observer error. And that is all we have on this particular method of primary research. So we will continue with another chapter on a different type of research shortly. Thank you.